Welcome to my channel. My name is Mary and today I'm going to show you how to make these spooky frogs. One version is a pumpkin frog and the other is a zombie frog. They're super quick and easy to make and perfect for the holidays. I'll be using US terms in this video and I did make this for beginners, but I want to work at a decent speed so the video isn't too long, so if you need it slower, please pause or adjust the playback speed as needed. And while I do quickly go over all the skills, it is helpful to already have some familiarity with some crochet basics. To make these frogs, I'm using a 7mm hook and 12mm safety eyes. You'll need some number 6 super bulky yarn in green for the zombie frog and orange for the pumpkin frog as well as brown. You'll also need some black number 4 worsted weight yarn for the mouth and red number 4 worsted weight yarn for the zombie frog and green for the pumpkin frog. Don't forget scissors, a yarn needle, and a stitch marker, especially if you are just starting out. It's very helpful. For the pumpkin frog, you also need a few more things to make the stem and the vine, such as a 3.75mm hook or something similar in that size, and these smaller needles to make the vine out of the number 4 worsted weight yarn. I also use a hook one size smaller than the hook I'm using for the rest of the super bulky yarn for the stem, so for me that's a 6mm hook, but if you don't have a slightly smaller hook size, you can probably still get away with the same one you're using for the rest of the number 6 super bulky yarn. After we have all our materials, let's get started. Let's start with the base of the body. We're going to be using our number 6 super bulky blanket yarn, and it's the same for the pumpkin and the zombie frog. You'll just be using different colors of yarn. I'm going to be using orange in this part of the tutorial, but if you're doing the zombie frog, use your green yarn. We're going to start with a magic circle, so start by pinching the yarn between your thumb and your pointer finger, and then wrap that yarn in the shape of an X around the pointer and middle finger. Hold that yarn in place, then take your hook, have it facing upwards, go underneath that X, turn it to the side, and grab that lower yarn over the middle finger and pull it underneath that X, turn it again upwards and go over the X to grab that same yarn again and pull it through the loop this time. And that's how you make a magic circle. You can check to make sure it's correct by pulling on that yarn end, and if it's able to close up the circle when you pull on it, that means it's correct. So now we're going to make 6 single crochets in the circle, so put your hook through that circle, and then grab the working yarn, pull it through once, and then again through both of the loops on the hook. So we're going to do this 5 more times for 6 total. So there's the second one, third one, fourth one, fifth one, and then our final 6 single crochet. Go ahead and pull on that tail end to tighten the magic circle. Now we're ready for round 2. So for round 2, we're going to be making an increase in each stitch, making a total of 12 stitches total. So start by making 1 single crochet in the first stitch, and then we're going to insert our hook into the same exact stitch to make a second single crochet. That's how we do an increase. So again, in the second stitch, we're making 2 single crochets for an increase. In the third stitch, again, we're making 2 single crochets in the same stitch to make an increase. Again, in the fourth stitch, 2 single crochets, there's 1, there's our second one. In the fifth stitch, 2 single crochets to make an increase, so 1, 2, and finally in the sixth stitch, we're making 2 single crochets to make an increase, 1, 2. So we should now have 12 stitches total. Let's count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Perfect. If you also have 12 stitches too, we can move on to the third round. So before we move on to the third round, let's grab our stitch marker and add it to the last stitch that we just made. This helps us keep track in case we lose track of our stitches. So for the third round, we're going to be making 1 single crochet and 1 increase, and repeat this 6 times for a total of 18 stitches. So in the first stitch, we're just making 1 single crochet, and then in the second stitch, we're going to make an increase by making 2 single crochets in that second stitch. So 1, 2. And then in the third one, we're going to again make 1 single crochet, and then in the fourth stitch, we're going to be making 2 single crochets for an increase. So 1, 2. In the fifth stitch, just make 1 single crochet, and then in the sixth stitch, we're going to make an increase by making 2 single crochets. So 1, 2. And the next one, we're just making 1 single crochet, And then in the stitch after that, we're making 2 single crochets for an increase. So 1, 2. And then again, let's make 1 single crochet. And then we're making 2 single crochets to make an increase. So last set, we're going to make 1 single crochet in the first stitch, and then we're going to take our stitch marker off. So our stitch marker marks that this is the last stitch in this round. And then we're going to make an increase in making 2 single crochets in that stitch. And we are done with round 3. So we should have 18 stitches total. So let's count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. If you also have 18 stitches, that's perfect. We can move on to the 4th round. So again, before we start on the 4th round, let's attach our stitch marker to the last stitch that we just made in the previous round. For this 4th round, we're going to be making 1 single crochet in each stitch for a total of 18 single crochets again. So let's begin. Start by making 1 single crochet in the first stitch. Perfect. We're going to do this again in the second stitch, just 1 single crochet, 1 single crochet in the third stitch, 1 single crochet in the fourth stitch, 1 single crochet in the fifth stitch, and so on. So there's our 6, 7, 8th, 9th, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and then lastly, let's remove that stitch marker for our last stitch and make our 18th single crochet. So we should have 18 single crochets total again, and that's it for the 4th round. So we are going to repeat this again 3 more times for round 5 to 7. So again, we're just making 18 single crochets in each round, 1 single crochet in each stitch. If you need me to count along with you and you find that helpful, just go ahead and rewind to the start of round 4 and repeat that 3 more times. Otherwise, I will just meet you after you finish 3 more rounds to start on round 8. Welcome back. So now, before we start on the 8th round, let's just make sure that we do have 7 rounds. So let's count from the top. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Perfect. If you also have 7 rounds, then we can move on to round 8. So as always, before we start on round 8, let's put our stitch marker in the last stitch that we just finished for round 7. For round 8, we're going to be doing 1 single crochet and 1 decrease, and we're going to repeat this 6 times, making a total of 12 stitches. So I like to do the invisible decrease, so that's what you're going to see me doing here, but if you don't know how to do that and you just want to do a regular decrease, that's fine too. So let's start. So in the first stitch, we're going to make 1 single crochet, but then in the second and third stitch, we're actually going to crochet them together by making an invisible decrease. So instead of going all the way through like I'm showing you here, we're only going to go halfway through the stitch. So again, instead of going all the way through like we normally do, we're going to go only for the front loop only. And then we're going to go only in the front loop only of the third stitch as well. So the front loop only of the second and third stitch. Then pull the yarn through both of those front loops of both stitches and then yarn over like usual. That's how you do an invisible decrease. So again, in the next stitch, we're just doing 1 single crochet, and then in the next 2 stitches, again, we're doing an invisible decrease. So go for that front loop only of both of the 2 stitches, yarn over, pull it through, and then yarn over again and pull it through. And then again, in the next stitch, we're just doing a single crochet just like normal. And then we're doing another invisible decrease, so again, only in the front loop only, and yarn over and pull through the loop again. And then a single crochet in the next stitch, and then another invisible decrease, so in the front loop only in the next 2 stitches. Pull the yarn through, and then again for the 2 loops on the hook. Again, another single crochet, and then again, another invisible decrease. Again, another single crochet, and then one last invisible decrease, so go for that front loop only, and we need to remove our stitch marker because that's the last stitch. And then go for that front loop only of the last stitch. And then yarn over, pour for those 2 loops, and then again for the 2 loops on the hook, and we are finished with our 8th round. We should have 12 stitches total. Let's count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Perfect. So before moving on to our very last round, let's first stuff the body of our frog. So grab our stuffing and then taking a little bit at a time, let's fill up the body of our frog. Again, I like to take a little bit at a time and really press it in so it's easier to form the shape. Usually when I put too much in at once, I find that I do end up overstuffing or getting really bulky shapes. So putting a little bit at a time helps a lot in forming the shape properly. So don't fill it up too much because we need to do our last round before we finish stuffing. So again, let's add our stitch marker to the last stitch that we just made. And now we're going to do our 9th and final round. For this round, we're going to be doing 6 invisible decreases, giving us a total of 6 stitches. So again, let's go into that front loop only of the first and the second stitch. Then we're going to yarn over and pull through those 2 front loops, and then again for the loops on the hook. And then we're just going to repeat that 5 more times. So again, another invisible decrease. And then our 3rd invisible decrease. Our 4th one. Our 5th one. And finally, let's remove that stitch marker so we can complete our last invisible decrease. And we are finished. So first, let's finish stuffing up the last bit of our body. And then we're going to fasten off. So to fasten off, take our hook, pull the working yarn straight for the loop on the hook. And then we're going to pull a bit of yarn through because we need it for sewing, so maybe around a foot. Cut that yarn and then pull the rest of the yarn completely through the loop. That's how we fasten off. So now we're going to grab our yarn needle and we're going to thread the yarn for the needle, and we're going to close up our ball, our spear, our body of the frog. So start by weaving the needle inwards for the first stitch, and then outwards for the second stitch, inwards again, outwards, inward, outward, and then we're going to just pull it tight. And that should close up your ball or the body of your frog. If you feel like you need like a few more stitches just to like close things up or even things out, go ahead and do that. I usually just do a few more. When it all looks good, just seal it off, insert the needle for a nearby spot, but leave a little bit of slack so you can put the needle through the slack left over and then pull tight. That helps to seal it up. And then just for like extra security, I like to knot my yarn a few times. I usually knot it until I think it's large enough where it won't easily get pulled out through the stitches, but also isn't too difficult where I can't even pull it through the stitches at all. After it's large enough, we're going to insert the needle through a nearby spot again in the frog's body. And then we're just going to push it through and pull that knot through the body. Then we're going to press down on the plush and then cut off the extra yarn and then fluff up our plush. And we are finished with the body of our frog. Now let's make the eye pieces. So using the same color as you did for the body, start by making a magic circle. Wrap an X around the pointer and middle finger, insert the hook underneath that X and grab that lower strand of yarn over the middle finger and pull it underneath the X. Then go over the X again, grab that strand of yarn again and pull it into the loop on the hook. Now let's make 6 single crochets in the magic circle. So insert that hook into the magic circle and make your first single crochet. Here's our second one, third, fourth, fifth, and finally the sixth. So pull that yarn end tight to tighten up the magic circle. And now we can move on to round 2. For round 2, we're just doing 6 single crochets again, so 1 in each stitch, starting with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And that's it for the eye piece. If it's inside out, like mine is, turn it outwards. And then we're gonna fasten off, pull that yarn for the loop, cut off a good chunk of yarn, at least a foot, and then pull that yarn all the way through. And that's it for the eye piece. So you're gonna make one more of these for a total of 2 eye pieces total. So after you finish the eye pieces, that's all the parts that you need to make for the zombie frog. But if you're making the pumpkin frog, we're gonna need to make the stem and the vine. So we're gonna be doing that next here. But if you're making the zombie frog, go ahead and skip past this and go straight to assembly. So to make the stem for your pumpkin frog, grab your number 6 super bulky blanket yarn in brown and also a size 6mm hook, or basically a hook that's one size smaller than the hook that you were using. Again, we're starting with the magic circle, so wrap that yarn in an X around your fingers, then insert the hook underneath that X, grab that yarn underneath the X, and then grab it over the X, pulling it for the loop. We're going to make 4 single crochets in the magic circle, so let's start with 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then pull that magic circle tight. And for the second round, again, we're doing 1 single crochet in each stitch. So 4 again. So there's 1, 2, 3, and 4. We're doing the same thing again in the third round, 1 single crochet in each stitch for 4 total. If your stem is inside out like mine is, go ahead and turn it right way around. The yarn end should be hanging out the inside. So now let's do our third round, starting with our first single crochet. And then our second single crochet, third, and finally our fourth. Now we just need to fasten off. So pull that yarn for the loop. And again, give yourself a good decent length because we need to use this for sewing later, and then cut that yarn and pull that yarn all the way through. And that's it for the stem. Now we just need to make the vine for our pumpkin frog, so grab our number 4 worsted weight yarn in green, and you'll also need your 3.75mm hook or something similar to that size for the number 4 worsted weight yarn. So to start our vine, we're going to make a slip knot. So to make a slip knot, wrap the yarn around your pointer and middle finger and have it cross over the top of the working yarn, making an X just like this. And then take your thumb and pointer finger and reach into that circle wrapped around your fingers and grab that working yarn and pull it through the circle. Tighten it up, and that's how you make a slip knot. If you have your slip knot correct, you should be able to tighten and loosen it by pulling on the yarn. So now we're going to grab our 3.75mm hook, or whatever hook you have that's similar in size, and then we're going to put it for that loop in our slip knot. Then we're going to tighten it up by pulling on the working yarn. And then we're going to chain 10. So to do that, yarn over and pull it for the loop on the hook. That's 1 chain. So do that 9 more times. There's our second one, third one, fourth, fifth, sixth, 7, 8, 9, 10. So now we're going to work backwards. So starting from the second chain from your hook, so skipping that first one and then going through the hole in that second chain, we're going to make a single crochet. And then again, going through that hole in the next chain, we'll make another single crochet. And then going through the hole again, so directly through that chain. Let's make another single crochet. So that's our third single crochet, and we're going to keep going. So there's our fourth one, and then into the next chain, our fifth single crochet, and then again for our sixth one, there's our seventh one, our eighth one, and then finally our very last one, our ninth single crochet. So we are done with our vine, so let's fasten off. So again, grab the working yarn, pull it through the loop on the hook, and then cut a decent amount so you can use it for sewing later. Then pull that yarn all the way through the loop. And your vine should automatically curl a little bit if you just push it together, and that's how we make the vine for our pumpkin. Now that we finished our parts, it's time to assemble everything, so let's start by attaching the eyes. So for one of the zombie's eyes and for both of the pumpkin frog's eyes, we're going to be attaching safety eyes, but for the other zombie frog eye, we're just going to do an X to represent a missing eye. So I'll show you how to do that first. If you're making the pumpkin frog, go ahead and skip this part. So grab your number 4 worsted weight yarn in red, and then grab your yarn needle. You can use the small yarn needle or the thicker one. Cut around 1 foot of yarn, and then we're going to thread the yarn into the needle. And we're going to sew for the inside of the eye. So to make sure that it's centered to the front, make sure that the yarn that we left for sewing on the eye piece is all the way on the right side. So then let's take our needle and we're going to go from the inside of the eye and push out on the top right side of the eye piece. So it should be between rows 1 and 2, leaning towards the higher end of row 1. So pull that out and then bring the needle and the yarn all the way to the bottom left side of the eye piece. And then you're going to exit that yarn needle out again at the top left side of the eye piece. And then bring that yarn down again to the bottom right side of the eye piece. And you should be pulling the yarn into the inside of the eye piece again. So that's how you make your X. You can go ahead and use your needle to loosen up any yarn parts that got a little bit too tight. And then when you're happy with the way it looks, you can secure it by tying the yarn together and also knotting it a few times if you want, and then cutting off any excess yarn. And that's how you make the X eye for the zombie frog. For the other eye and for both of the pumpkin frog's eyes, we're adding safety eyes. So again, make sure that the yarn that we left for sewing is on the right side of each eye. Then grab your safety eyes and place them in between rounds 1 and 2 of the eye piece that we made. And make sure that it's centered to the front. Again, we know where the front is based on putting the yarn that we left for sewing all the way on the right side. When the placement looks good to you, grab the backings for our safety eyes and secure our safety eyes in place. So now it's time to sew our eye pieces onto the body of the frog. So we're going to start between round 1 and round 2 of the body of the frog. So starting with the left side, let's place our needle in between round 1 and round 2 of the body. So we're starting on the left side because remember the yarn that we left for sewing is on the right side of the eye that we put for the frog. So that's how we make sure that the eye is facing forward. So the needle should go into the frog between rounds 1 and 2 and exit out between rounds 2 and 3. We're going to sew for the entirety of the eye piece, so we're going to close the 2 sides together, just like that. We're not going to be stuffing our eye piece for the frog because we want it to be flat. And then we're going to go for the same place that we exited out with the needle, and then move the needle down 1 round to exit, and then again go for both sides of the eye piece for the frog. And then again, we're going to go for the same place that we exited out and go down 1 more row. And then finally, we're going to get the corner of that eye piece. So for me, I like to go through it again. So I'll start from the bottom rounds and work upwards this time. And this just lets me secure the eye a little bit more to the frog. So finally, to secure everything, we're going to take our needle and push it through a nearby spot. And then we're going to leave a little bit of slack so we can push our needle through that slack left over. And then pull tight. And then for extra security, I like to knot the yarn a few times and then push it through the body of the frog. So after your knot is large enough, use your needle to pull the knot for the body of the frog. And then we're just going to push down on the body of the frog so we can pull out the yarn and cut off any excess yarn. Puff up your frog again and we are finished. So for the other side, again, we're going to use our yarn needle and thread the yarn that we left for sewing from the eye piece through the yarn needle. So this time we're going to look at our left eye and see where it ended and trace that all the way around to the other side. And that's where we're going to start sewing from. So we're going to sew from the bottom up this time. So again, we're going to start our yarn needle through the bottom row and exit out the row on top of it. And once again, we're going to sew through both sides of the eye piece, closing it up and making it flat. Again, we're not stuffing the eye piece. And then we're going to insert our needle for the same place that we exited and then exit a row above it. And then again, go for the eye piece. And then insert our needle into the same place that we exited out of and go up one row. Again, we're going to go for the eye piece. And then finally, we're going to insert our needle and exit out between rows 1 and 2 and sew down the corner of that eye. So again, like the other side, I like to go back through it again. So this time we're starting from the top and sewing back down. Again, when you're ready to secure it, take the needle for a nearby spot and then leave a little bit of slack so you can push the needle through that. Then pull tight. And then for extra security, knot it a few times. And then pull it for the body of the frog and cut off any excess yarn. Now it's time to attach the mouth, so grab your number 4 worsted weight yarn in black and cut about a foot of yarn. Then grab your larger or smaller sewing needle, it doesn't really matter which one, and thread the yarn through. And we're going to place the mouth on the 3rd round. So it's going to start between the 2nd and 3rd round and end between the 3rd and 4th round. So let's count from the sides. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so we found the center. And we're going to again start between the 2nd and the 3rd round. And we're going to pull the yarn through and then go back over. And then exit one row below, kind of centered in between where we pulled the strand of yarn above it. Go underneath the strand of yarn that we made earlier and then pull that down. Then we're going to go back to where we first started and grab that yarn that we started out with and pull that out to the bottom where we ended. That way we can tie both of the yarn ends together and secure our mouth. So tie it together a few times, and I sometimes like to make a knot. And then we're going to hide it inside of the body of the frog by using the needle to pull it for the body of the frog. Squish down on the plush and cut off the excess yarn. And we are finished with the mouth of our frog. Finally, we need to add our spooky features to our frog, so let's first start with the zombie frog. If you're doing the pumpkin frog, go ahead and skip this part. For the zombie frog, we need to add these little gashes onto the front and onto the back of the frog. Let's start by grabbing our number 4 worsted weight yarn in red and our yarn needle. You can use a larger version or the smaller version, it doesn't really matter in this part. So I cut around 2 feet of yarn, but I did end up running a little bit short at the end of this, so I would recommend cutting a little bit more than that. So let's start by making the gash on the front side of the frog. So count 2 stitches to the side of the mouth. And it's going to be 1 row beneath where the mouth ended. So we're going to start our needle there and then go diagonal towards the center of the frog and exit around 2 rows beneath, around center to where the frog's mouth is. So pull the yarn through, and then I like to go over it a second time just to make this main gash a little bit thicker than the supporting gashes. And then when we're going around the second time around, we're going to now exit the needle around 1.5 stitches to the side of the top end of the gash. Then bring the needle a row down to the other side of the gash, and then exit out again on the same row, but on the other side of the gash. And then again, we're going to pull the yarn onto the other side of the main gash and again go one row beneath. So that's how we do the front side. And now we're going to exit out on the other side of the frog so we can do the back side. So we're going to start the gash around the center of the back side of the frog, so exit the needle out somewhere near there. Then again, we're going to go 2 rows down in a slanted direction, and we're going to make our main gash. So we're going to go over it twice to make it a little bit thicker. And then we're going to exit out to the side. It'll be about 1 stitch to the left, 1 row lower than the top of our main gash. And then we're going to bring it across, but this time bring it 1 row over the top of our main gash. After that, we'll bring it down to the bottom again on the other side of the main gash. And then again, bring it across over the main gash. After that, bring that yarn back to the front where we first started, and then we're going to secure it by tying the yarn ends together and knotting it and then pushing it for the body of the frog. And congratulations, you are finished with your little zombie frog. To finish our pumpkin frog, we need to add our stem and our vine. So let's start by adding our stem. So we're going to place our stem in between the 2 eyes, but we're going to place it a little bit more towards the back of the frog, still near the center, but a little bit more towards the back. That way we have a little bit more room for our vine later. So it should go right there. So grab your larger yarn needle and we're going to start sewing the stem to the frog's body. We're just going to work in a circle around the circumference of the stem. If you want to stuff your stem, you can. I don't think that I need to stuff mine because of the thicker yarn and the extra yarn that's inside of it already from the yarn strand left over. But if you want to stuff it, go ahead and stuff it as well. So we're going to work in a circumference all the way around the frog, and that's how we're going to attach our stem. So when you're ready to secure your stem, again, we're just going to enter for a nearby spot, leave a little bit of slack so we can pull the needle through that, pull tight, and then knot it a few times, and then pull that stem through the body of the frog and cut off any excess yarn. So now we're going to attach our vine onto the very top of our frog, right in front of the stem. Because we're sewing through a thinner yarn, we're going to need to use a smaller sewing needle. So use the yarn that we left for sewing to attach the vine onto the top of the frog right in front of the stem. So I usually go over it a few times for the body of the frog and then through the vine to make sure it's super secure. And then we're just going to secure it just like we did with every other part of the frog. And that is how you make these spooky frogs. Let me know which one you made and what you named them in the comments. And if you like this tutorial, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It really does mean a lot to me. And if you want to share your frogs with me, don't forget to follow and tag my socials. I love seeing the ones y'all make. Until next time.